Welcome everyone to my how-to video on how to complete the executive summary for assignment 7055. Okay, so if you'd like to learn more or hear more about the assignment 7055 overall, please see my other video on an overview of that. Okay, so the first of two documents that you have to create for this assignment is an executive summary, and we see that listed on the BTW wiki page for assignment 7055 under tasks, and it is the first task that we need to complete. So you can clearly see that I need to complete this assignment, I need to draft an executive summary for my boss, and in all of these situations that is Alex Nostrovia. So I'll need to address it to Alex about lesson 3 actions. Okay, well, I should probably look into what lesson 3 is first. So this is available electronically on our Moodle page. So I'm going to go back to our main Moodle page under week 1. Here is assignment 7055, and right underneath that is a PDF file of lesson 3 on actions. So if you just click on that, a PDF should immediately open up with our chapter on actions. So I'm going to take some time reading this to make sure I understand what the point is. And all of these readings are about how to make our writing clearer, more professional, more graceful. So I would recommend that you read this and take notes, or if you can, highlight things that are of interest to you, and keep track of what each section in particular is drawing attention to. And basically what this reading is about is that a sentence is more clear and graceful when a character is also in the subject position of a sentence, and when an action is also in the verb part of a sentence. Pretty straightforward. This also, so if you look at the examples, many of them that you'll see that violate this approach are written in passive voice, and so some problems happen as a result. The writing becomes longer, the ideas become more convoluted, the order of the ideas are harder to follow, and there doesn't seem to be a coherence of ideas. So each of these readings has a few sections explaining the points and giving examples along the way, so make sure you don't continue reading the next section until you fully understand what the first one is saying. And there's a whole bunch of exercises to try these out to make sure that you can apply these concepts. And then each chapter ends with basically a summation, so summing up. So as you can see, what we want to do is put our characters in the subject position of the sentence and what those characters are doing in the verb position. So this is basically talking about active voice. You have an actor acting upon an object. Okay, and so there are great examples in here of what happens when our language gets too complex and those things don't match up. Okay, once you feel you have mastered the knowledge of this chapter well enough, then it is time to start writing an executive summary. So I'm going to go back to our wiki. Okay, so now I understand more about lesson 3. So now I want to know what is an executive summary. So I can see from this third bullet point that I will want to create my executive summary in the form of a memo. Okay, so what does a memo look like? You can click on this link here, and this page will open up about memos, and there's an example memo here that should pop up when you click it. There it is. Memorandums always say memo or memorandum at the top. They have a date, a to line, a from line, a subject line, or an RE line, depending. So if you're the originator of this content, basically it's not a response, then you would say subject. But if you're responding to a request, then you would say RE. So in this situation, we're responding to a request from Alex, so you'd probably write RE in an appropriate subject line. So we know from the instruction page that when you create this memo, you're writing it to Alex The from line should be your name. I want your name here. And then the subject line should be something appropriate like executive summary of lesson 3. And then you should write your executive summary. Okay, so that's an example. Also, if you look on our Moodle, underneath 7055, there is my memo on memos. So if you open that up, if you click on it, this will pop up. And it basically just gives you a little bit of an overview of memos, but you can also use this as a template if you want. So I would probably change this to Alex's full name, put my full name there, today's date, and then change this to an appropriate subject line, change subject to RE, and then replace this with my executive summary of the chapter. Okay. If you don't like this this template, you can always open a new file, create a new file, and Microsoft Word has a whole bunch of templates that you're welcome to use. So I'm just going to do a search for memo. And any of these are appropriate. They'll all have memo or memorandum at the top, a date, a to line, a from line. Oh, looks like my Word is slowing down. But it will search. Here we go. Here's a bunch of templates for memorandums. And just make sure you use them correctly. So for example, this one says company name. You'd want to change company name to Mega Consulting, because that is our company in this hypothetical situation. Okay. So now I know what my executive summary is supposed to look like. I have a template to write it in. Now I need to write an executive summary. So an executive summary, if you click on this link here, will take you to this page inside the BTW Wiki. Yes, it is a summary, but it's not like the kinds of summaries that we write maybe for our literature classes where we're just trying to prove we've read something. An executive summary is a very specific kind of summary in which you are summarizing content for a reader who has not read the original, but who still needs to make decisions based off of that content. And so this is really important. The needs of your audience is extremely important. We may not know exactly what use they're going to put it, but we do know based off of just the nature of the genre, executive summary, that it's written for someone with typically more power than us, that's an executive, and whose time is more valuable than ours. So they've assigned us to read this much larger document and write a much shorter version of it. And here's the key thing. We can't skimp on content. So I wouldn't want to say something like, and then Williams goes into an analysis of characters and subjects, because my reader wouldn't know what that means. My reader wouldn't have read the chapter, and therefore that information, if I summarize it that way, won't be usable by my executive. So the length of an executive summary is typically about 10% the length of the original, but as we know, this assignment already has a minimum, so it's no less than 200 words. And in my experience, these executive summaries don't go longer than about a page single-spaced. So it needs to be as long as it needs to in order for you to convey all of the main points of the chapter, and it should be in the same order as the original, so that they can follow along in the order that makes sense. And it should convey the information so that someone who's not read the chapter would be able to use it as well as you can. Okay, so imagine you're writing this executive summary for your roommate or family member, and they need to be able to apply it to the same level of quality as you can to their writing. So you wouldn't say things like, and then Williams analyzes a bunch of examples, because that wouldn't be useful for your reader to use. Okay, and so on the subject of examples, if you feel that a rule that you're trying to summarize is complex enough that your reader wouldn't really be able to understand it well enough without an example, go ahead and include an example. It could be an example of your own, or you could, in quotation marks, quote one from the Williams reading, as long as it's brief. Okay, so that's the executive summary. If you look on our Moodle page, I've also included a couple of examples of executive summaries. So I'm going to pull those up now. So this is what you would pull up. when you click on that link. And they look very different. Obviously, the content of the first one is different, but I wanted to show you this because there are bolded section headings, and you can incorporate this into your memos, especially if it's a little longer. And so this would make it very easy visually for your reader to be able to find the section that they need, because again, we may not know exactly what they need to use it for. This is another version of executive summary, and this is actually on a chapter from the same book. It's a chapter that we won't be reading. And so it just gives you an idea of what that content might look like. Okay. This executive summary is okay. I would probably want to go into a little bit more detail explaining things like what an article is, just in case my reader may not remember what that means. Okay, so just remember that for this assignment, in order to get a perfect grade, you have to meet the objective of the document. And the objective of the document executive summary is to summarize content to the point that someone who has not read the original would be able to use it as well as you can. So, if we look back at our assignment prompt, we see that one of the goals is to overcome the acceptance challenge by revising and editing this text. And the acceptance challenge is basically, would your reader accept this for their uses? So once you've finished a draft of your executive summary, read it through as though you have not read the original and look for places where you need to include a little bit more explanation, or you need to make your summary a little more complete. Okay. So once you're done writing your executive summary and it is formatted as a memo, you would want to put it in a Word document, and then later you will add the other document that belongs with it. That would be this item number 2. So if you'd like to hear more about the second memo necessary to complete assignments 7055, I hope that you will check out my other video. Thank you and good luck.